Oh, I'm sorry you had to see that. Anyways, what's up, Thrashers, and welcome back once again to the Thrash Maniac 99 YouTube channel, and I am back with yet another album review, and, well, today I am talking about, for a lot of mainstream metalheads, this is probably the most anticipated album of the month of September, and of course, I am talking about the latest offering from Lorna Shore. I Feel the EVERBLACK Festering Within Me. This also came out on September 12th, this time on Century Media Records. This is the band's 5th studio full-length overall, and actually, this is my first time listening to a full album from this band. Although, I should put an asterisk on this, I have listened to this band before live. I did see them live open for Gojira and Mastodon 2 years ago when they were touring on Pain Remains, and Gojira was still on the Fortitude tour, and Mastodon on Hushed and Grim. So it was like the big metal tour of 2023 for like the mainstream, and Lorna Shore opened, so I saw them live, and they were okay. I mean, when it comes to deathcore, I am very picky about deathcore, and whenever I saw them live, I was like, eh. I mean, the lead playing was great. I will not deny the leads. But everything else I just was not sold on. Excuse me. But I decided, you know what? I saw this was coming out. I might as well give it a shot and see if it's anything like I was expecting it to be. Like, I'll be honest. Excuse me. Still not quite over my head cold. I'm almost all the way through. But anyways, I will say, like, I immediately thought about whenever I was going into this album, I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be one of them hype bands that ends up disappointing me or making me feel angry, like in the case of the Sleep Token album. However, what you saw there at the beginning of the video of me, quote-unquote, eating my words, that's both figuratively and literally. I had to eat my words because I will actually go ahead and say this was actually an enjoyable listen. I know, it's fucking insane, I know, but hey, I have to be honest with myself. I actually, for the most part, really enjoyed this album. So, yeah, when it comes to deathcore, like I said, I'm very, very picky about it. But we kick things off with Prison of Flesh, and I did watch the music video for this, and I gotta say it was pretty gross music video, but the song itself, like, it starts off with, like, this film score, and then the drums come in, and then immediately you're unleashed into big, fast blast beats and tremolo riffs that I would say, for a good chunk of this album, there's a lot of technical death metal going on here. Like, there are some riffing on here and some moments on here that made me think of some tech death bands, like I would say in particular, like Obscura, maybe Recent Job for a Cowboy to an extent, and hell, even Allegiant. I kind of get nods to those bands. When it comes to the majority of the riff work on this album, it's more on the technical death metal side of things, not as much about the hardcore, deathcore, metalcore stuff as much, maybe only in some of the vocal flips where you get like those nasty gutturals, big screams, or like mid-range hardcore bark, which I will go ahead and say, even though I initially wasn't a big fan of him, I have to give the devil his due. Will Ramos is actually a really damn good vocalist. Like, he's got good range. He can hit all the notes of extreme metal vocals to a T, whether it be death metal, black metal, hell, even grindcore. Almost to the point where I agree with Jam and John. Perhaps Will Ramos should start a grindcore band, and he would fit perfectly in that band vocally. Now, with this opening track, you actually do get like some dissonant tremolos, which dissonance really doesn't come up hardly at all, except for one other song that I'll talk about later. But you do get actually a pretty solid breakdown and a ripping lead. Like, I will go ahead and say the MVP of this album is the lead work. Holy crap. Perhaps I'll even say some of the best lead work I have heard all year. Like, I forget the name of the guitarist, but man, he has a talent on that fucking guitar, like coming up with great melodies and shred and tapping with like technical and even classical flair. Like, holy shit, this guitarist has got his chops down to a T. Then we move on into tracks like Oblivion and In Darkness and even Unbreakable. Like, all three of those songs kind of start to incorporate other aspects. Like, Oblivion in particular brings in a little bit of a black metal influence. Like, this song, and then I would say a couple songs later, have a little bit of a black metal influence. Like, I would say Marduk and Dark Funeral, like the more hyper fast Swedish black metal with like evil, sinister sounds to them. More so Dark Funeral than Marduk, I would say, but it does add an extra dynamic to the songwriting on here. And then both In Darkness and Unbreakable, those two songs incorporate quite a bit of like almost like melodic death metal and even power metal melodies and riffs, which kind of adds this contrast where it comes off as more epic and bright and full of light, which does actually make this album have like a tale of two sides kind of thing, which I'll talk about the back half here in a moment. But like in this first half, it's like it kind of going for like a push and pull dynamic between the darkness and the lightness when it comes down to some of these riffs and patterns and sections within songs. Like, I would say in particular, Unbreakable was maybe the strongest track of the first half, and it's the shortest track of the album at under 5 minutes. And it's really bright, but it's also got that Allegiant-esque technical death metal edge to it with great harmonies. Like, harmonies on the leads, whenever they do show up, which is on about half of this album, were really, really, really smooth. And then the closer of the first half, Glenwood, which is actually one of only 2 tracks that does not have a breakdown. In Glenwood, it starts off more clean and soaring before the heft really comes in, and then you get, of course, some more tech death riffing with blast beats and even some thrashy rhythms. And then it kind of goes from a bit of like a darker, like somber sound to a more bright and triumphant sound towards the end, and even piano and female wailing vocals. But then we get into the second half where things start to take a bit of a darker turn in terms of the feeling and the tones and everything. Lionheart is another track that incorporates a little bit of black metal into the riffing and the drums, but it's done in like a triplet rhythm. And then Death Can Take Me. This was maybe one of the big standouts on here because it's kind of going for, like, again, a push and pull dynamic between like the more tech death side and a bit of like a darker, more somber, almost black metal side to the song. It's just kind of going back and forth between those two different schools of thought. And then the track War Machine, dare I say, it starts off with an almost thrash metal riff, and then the riff on top of the blast beats was really cool, and it gallops and grooves along, almost like straight up death metal a little bit, and just solid riffing. It does get a little bit more sinister, but maybe my personal favorite track of the album, for the most part, would be A Nameless Hymn, which the song itself definitely reminds me a little bit of Cattle Decapitation, even down to the vocals. Like Will Ramos trying his best Travis Ryan vocal style on here, and it does work for the most part, I gotta be honest. And then the closer, Forevermore, which was the longest track of the album at nearly 10 minutes, you do get some pretty dark melodies and like pretty strings with gorgeous female wailing vocals again. And the song itself is like basically the perfect amalgamation of everything. Tech death riffing, some black metal tremolo, some melodic death metal touches, even a nice little dynamic shift where it goes quiet and builds up with a soothing lead melody into the proper lead with the harmonies and a pretty piano ending. So songwriting wise, I thought for the most part, this was pretty well crafted songwriting, like at least in the second half more specifically, where they managed to make everything feel a little bit more cohesive. Now, as far as the issues go, I still do have some issues with this album and band in particular. First off, I will say the production is still maybe a little bit too polished for my liking. Like, if they want to get a nice clean sound, they should go to Dave Otero. If you want to get a nice clean sound but still sound organic, he would be the perfect guy to go to for this band, because I will admit, I forget the name of the producer they actually got, but I think he just kind of makes everything sound a little bit too processed at times. But it's not as bad as I was expecting it to be in terms of the over-processed production. Other issues, like the first half, a couple of the songs kind of felt mishmashed a little bit. Like I would say, Prison of Flesh a little bit kind of feels a bit mishmashed. Same with In Darkness. Like those songs kind of feel like we're just taking ideas and just cramming them together. And then it's not really so much an issue. It was just more of a thing I had about this band. I always felt Will Ramos vocally was trying too hard to be the new Travis Ryan, and it's like, we have Travis Ryan already. And this is not a dig at Will Ramos, far from it. This album certainly proved me wrong about his vocals. Like, he has an impressive vocal style. I think he could fit in a black metal band, he could fit in a death metal band, he could fit in a grindcore band, and it wouldn't feel out of place vocally because he's got such a dynamic voice in terms of extreme vocals. And then the biggest problems I had with this album would be a lot of these songs kind of draw out the intro and the end. And then the other problem, the needless bass drops into breakdowns, and also too many breakdowns. Like, I would say, like, the only tracks where the breakdowns I thought were actually pretty good would be the first breakdown in Prison of Flesh, the first breakdown in Oblivion, the first breakdown in Darkness, Lionheart, Death Can Take Me, War Machine, and A Nameless Hymn. Like, those breakdowns were actually pretty solid, but when they add more breakdowns afterwards, it gets to be a little bit too self-indulgent and a bit repetitive for me. And especially with the bass drops coming in on top of them, it just kind of suffocates the endings of these songs and kind of makes the songs drag. And then the other thing, this album's long. It's over 66 minutes long, and I honestly feel like they could have trimmed out, like, or cut the fat on the intros and the outros and the bass drops and the breakdowns, and could have condensed these songs down. Maybe take like 10 minutes off of this album. You'd have actually a pretty damn good 56-minute album if you just whittle things down a little bit. But in terms of songcraft, this band did a pretty solid job at crafting these songs for the most part. So, despite all the complaints, I didn't think I would give this high of a score, but because I actually did enjoy it, I'm going to give it a 3.5. It's not quite at a 4. It's maybe a little closer to the 3 mark, but it is a soft 3.5. I never thought I would say it, but this was actually pretty damn good. Like, again, I'm not the world's biggest deathcore fan, and even for the symphonic aspects, I personally don't mind the symphonic aspects. I just wish they could trim it down from the beginnings of songs, and I think it would make it all worthwhile. So, yeah, I have to be honest, this was actually pretty damn good. So, if you're a fan of, like, Shadow of Intent, I would say Cattle Decapitation, Dark Funeral, Allegiant, bands along those lines, Whitechapel even, I'd say give it a listen. Actually, if you're not convinced by this band, I will say this album has made me respect them a lot more now. Granted, I don't see myself going back to this album too much unless somehow I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to keep giving it more listens, see if it keeps growing on me, and based on how much I enjoyed it, it might. I mean, I gotta be honest, this was pretty good. But of course, those are just my opinions. What did you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. But until next time, thank you for watching. Keep your horns high and your dreams wet.